things that are normally hidden away from what we can see with just our eyes. So we got some different water samples of all different types of water, both store-bought and from nature and all that. And we used the HDX spectrometer, which is my favorite spectrometer. This thing's so cool. It's got great stray light performance, and it gives great performance down in the UV as well. We used it with a broadband light source to look at all these different water sources in absorbance mode. So one of the first waters we looked at was spring water from a store called Publix. It's a Southeast U.S. store. We're located in Florida, so we have Publixes all over the place. They sell this spring water, and it has on the top printed what facility it's from. There's like an F5 and an F6 up top. So we're going to take a look at those two facilities. So what we're seeing is a massive change in absorbance down at the lowest UV levels that are normally hidden to our human eyes. And that could be from a number of things. Maybe that's from a bad filter at one of the facilities that isn't pulling out as much of the contaminants. Or maybe it's just a different source of spring water that's going into those facilities. So now let's compare that to drinking water from the same store. It's Publix drinking water, just relabeled on the same type of carton that they sell it in. It looks pretty much the same as the spring water from Facility 5, which is interesting. Now, what about tap water? We mentioned that we're in Florida. We're in South Florida specifically. And it's actually cleaner than the drinking water down in the UV, in the lowest UV peak. It actually shows less absorbance there, but it has more absorbance and more dissolved stuff at some of the upper wavelengths as you approach 300 nanometers and such. And this isn't totally surprising. You would expect this from a number of influencers. One would be municipalities are going to add things like fluoride for your teeth to prevent tooth decay, which is good to not have your teeth fall out of your head. And also the pipes. Pipes aren't always new. Maybe you live in a new apartment, that's fine, but the water is still going miles and miles and miles through old pipes to get to you, and it's picking stuff up along the way. So that's what we're seeing there in that tap water, is in that increased absorbance at those higher wavelengths. And if you are someone that likes Fiji or other expensive brands, we went ahead and took a look at those as well. So let's take a look at some Fiji water. Again, interestingly, this is about as clean as the spring water, the Publix store-bought spring water from Facility 5 there, which was an interesting find considering the difference in price between the two, because it is much more expensive for the Fiji water. But how about actual mountain water? We see in all the commercials the Rockies and all these mountain scenes where the water is coming from. But what about real mountain water? I spend a lot of time up in Spokane, Washington, and in particular on Mount Spokane, and I do a lot of hiking around Mount Spokane. And I was up there in summer of 2020, if I'm not mistaken, and had a chance to take some water samples back then. So I took some samples of the snow melt actually melting and running down as a stream down the side of the mountain off the rocks and stuff, and then also some ground snow. And looking at the snow melt, it was, again, interesting to see that it's pretty much as clean as the cleanest Publix store-bought spring water. And then the ground snow, when we took a look at that, that's pretty much the same as the drinking water that we buy. So this is pretty interesting to see, actually, that mountain water is potentially as clean as they say it is in the commercials. But this doesn't tell us anything about pathogens or potential diseases that have worked their way into the water from animals that did their business upstream or whatnot. But let's look now at some typical Florida lake water. And this is representative of freshwater, groundwater that folks in villages may have access to. And this is pretty clean water as far as lake water goes, because this was from a lake in my own neighborhood that actually butts up next to a nature preserve. So it's right next to the Weeden Island Nature Preserve, so there's not any factories or anything dumping into it. It's a pretty clean lake. But look at that. This is a whole nother level. It's off the charts compared to everything else we've looked at so far. And this is the quality that 1 in 5 people on this earth have access to drink and make their food. So we nitpick about minor differences in our water from mostly benign contaminants, things like the fluoride that we mentioned that actually are meant to help our teeth, to give us better dental health. Whereas over 1 billion people on this earth are stuck with terrible water quality. And this terrible water quality both worsens the quality of their life and shortens the ultimate span of that life. So they have a shorter lifetime than we do on average, and that shorter lifetime is a worse quality because of the poor quality of water that's continually being fed into their bodies and their own biochemistry. But Halma and WaterAid have teamed up to help the underserved parts of India gain access to clean water, the water that we have access to normally. So you've had a chance to learn some pretty useful information here today on the clean water that you and I have access to in our first world societies. And all we ask in return is to please visit the link below and consider helping those who may go their entire life never having access to the clean water that we are so fortunate to have. Thanks so much.